everybody, welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be my breastfeeding update. How's it going? What's going on? Because my baby is now a toddler, and the last time I really talked about breastfeeding was in an episode of The Hormone Diaries on my other YouTube channel, and that was very much about those early first few months, fourth trimester, the newborn time, and a lot has happened since then. So that video covered things like the first latch, time in hospital, those first really difficult 6 weeks, things like cluster feeding, seeing a lactation consultant, all of that. And we kind of left off around 4 or 5 months postpartum, 4 or 5 months old, and Rowan was very much in the distracted phase, whereas previously just very chill and zen and often sleepy at the boob. It was like, ooh, what's that? What's that? What's that? So that's where we left off. Now Rowan is 16 months old, and once we'd established that breastfeeding was something that worked for us, I'd always said that my goal was to get to 1 year, and then after that I kind of had no plan really. So we got to a year, still here, still very much breastfeeding, and so just going with the flow at this point. I don't really have any other goals with breastfeeding other than just to continue doing whatever works for us. So I want to just chat through how things have gone, what the changes have been, what has happened. I also asked for some of your questions on Instagram, so hopefully we'll hit things that people are curious about, and one of those main things is teething and breastfeeding. Oh yeah, so Rowan got his first 2 bottom teeth when he was 8 months old, and then his top 2 came in around 11 months. And teething definitely presented some challenges for us with breastfeeding, albeit temporarily, but it was still very difficult. So with the first set, Rowan just got incredibly bitey, and it was kind of in like a cheeky, fun way. He was like, ooh, this is a thing that I can do now. And so it involved a lot of being like, no, don't bite, and like pulling him off the boob, and then like trying to get him to relatch in a like calmer, ooh, I want to bite you way. And that lasted a couple of days, and then he just stopped doing it. But I just had to be really consistent with him anytime that he bit or tried to bite or was like looking at me like, I was like, absolutely not. No. So that hurt, but I don't remember that being as big of a deal than when the next 2 teeth came in. So with those teeth, it was a similar thing with the biting and stuff during the day, but the real problem came at night, because suddenly what Rowan was doing when he was feeding to sleep at night, and like when he was waking up in the night and latching and stuff, was he would just clamp down. But because he was asleep, it was kind of like he didn't really have as much control over it, and it was a case of having to like pry my nipple out of his mouth whilst this baby was like half asleep with his jaw just like clenched and my nipple like trapped in between his teeth. It was so bad. I was whimpering at night, like trying not to wake him up with the sounds of my pain. I had to bust out the nipple cream again. So glad I hadn't thrown that away, because I only really used it for the first 6 weeks and then hadn't touched it, but I needed it again. And it got so bad to the point where I needed a night off. Like my boobs needed a rest. And so Dan was just like, okay, I'll resettle him this night, like it'll be fine, we'll give your boobs a rest. And I was like, thank you. And that was a complete fail. The first wake up that he did, where he was like crying and screaming, and Dan was trying to then give him a bottle and trying to settle him, that baby just had the look of complete betrayal on his face. Like, mummy, daddy, why are you denying me the thing that I want? Why are you doing this to me? And in the end, I just gave in and fed him to sleep that night. Luckily though, that wasn't as bad, and that was the last night of it. And after that, hadn't had any more issues. He's had a whole bunch of more teeth since then as well, but haven't had any of the same stuff. It was just like for those first 2 sets, the front ones at the top and the bottom, it was like he just had to relearn how to latch, and then we've been good since then. He still doesn't have any molars yet though, so we shall see. But in each of those cases, the biting and the pain lasted maybe 2 or 3 days, but I can totally see why some people are just like, I'm done. Because if it had lasted much longer for me, then I probably would have done the same. So obviously Rowan is older now. He is now a toddler. So what is it like breastfeeding a toddler? Over time, he's definitely fed less and less, although at the moment it feels like it's been pretty steady for a while now, but you never know when things are going to change up. I definitely noticed a shift around when he was a year old, but actually that was mainly a shift in how much milk he was drinking at his childminders and how much I was able to pump. But actually how much I was nursing him when we were together, I don't really think that changed all that much. I tend to offer it to him at similar times every day, and he'll go for it or he won't, but then also we might feed at other times when he's asked for it too. So we've always just used booby to refer to it. That's just the language that we have fallen into. And for a while, Rowan would be pointing at my boobs and going, B, B, B. And so obviously that meant booby, but then he started changing it to me, which was kind of confusing. But around that time, he then started to say mummy. So I was like, oh, is this all you think of me, child? But booby or BB hasn't come back and it's still very much me. And then he also says mummy. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Okay, so size and positions, because obviously this is a big change and my child is massive. I cannot even believe that he used to just fit across my body, like his entire body laying like this. Like that is wild to me. Now he will just have like his head and his upper body and then his legs are just like all the way off to the side. It does make feeding in public a lot more difficult because if I'm like just on a chair, then there's just a lot of body and limbs that I have to like keep under control that have no support. It's really great if I find like a big armchair or a sofa when I'm out and about, because then there's just like, you know, things for him to rest on and stuff. This is usually where we breastfeed at home other than in bed. And actually more recently, I've been finding having him just like sat next to me facing me a lot easier than having him just like laying across my lap. So he'll like sit next to me on the sofa, but like facing me. And then that means he can have this boob, or he'll sit next to me on this side and that means this boob. And that also like means I've got my arms free. It means that he's a lot more free to like leave and go wherever he wants next. Another nursing position that we do sometimes, which in my head is very funny and I don't think I would do out in public, but I'm happy to do at home. And that is if I'm sitting on the sofa and he'll come like walk up to me, and if he's standing in between my legs and then just standing and feeding. It's cute. It's cute. There is so much playing with the nipple. When he's asleep, it's just like this reflex thing where he just wants to like hold on to the other boob, smush the other boob, squeeze the nipple, pull the nipple. It's not fun. I have always slept naked, but now I wear this at night because it means that I can feed him from one boob and then the other boob is protected by some fabric so he doesn't attack the nipple so much. I mean, he can pull it up, so it doesn't help all that much, but it does prevent a lot of it. The other wild stuff that he does to the nipple is a thing called Niplash, and I can't remember where I heard this or if somebody came up with it, but it's just a term that I've heard floating around. And it kind of is what you can imagine, but essentially baby on boob, baby gets distracted, hears a noise, or even it could just be for no reason whatsoever, and yanks their head back, pulls off so quick, but takes your nipple with them just for a moment of time before the boob and the mouth separates. Ouch! It is not fun and it always comes as a surprise and it always hurts. And there's just often been times where I'm just like holding my boobs and just like rubbing my boobs and just being like, they just need a little bit of love. They've just been in a war today. Like the baby's been particularly brutal with my boobs and my nipples today. So I'm just like, let them rest, please. I will say though, for me, nursing breastfeeding has been wonderful. And whilst, yeah, these are a lot of kind of cons, the downsides, like the annoying things that kind of hurt, the pros for me massively outweigh the cons, which is why I'm still doing it, which is why we're still here. For some reason, it just feels easier to share the things that are hard rather than like the things that are easy and good and positive. And I love breastfeeding and I love the bond that it gives me with my kid, and it is really easy for the most part. One thing that was really not easy though was when Rowan went on a nursing strike. So this happened when he was about 14 months old, and we're pretty sure it was because he was teething, and he just outright rejected the boob, was not interested. I would offer and he just wouldn't even latch. This lasted for about 2 days, but obviously when I was in it, I didn't know how long it would last for, and it just felt awful. I was emotionally distraught. I cried multiple times when it became obvious to me that he wasn't going to latch and we still needed to give him some milk. And so I was like, wait, does this mean I need to pump? And the fact that I was like getting the pump out and having a pump whilst Rowan was in the flat with me just sent me. And I'm just like there pumping and crying whilst Rowan is like happily having a bottle of milk in the other room. And I was like, what is happening? It was real bad. But I read a bunch of stuff about nursing strikes, and a lot of the advice out there is just about keeping offering in different positions and locations, doing it in a really low pressure kind of way. And a lot of it was really reassuring about the fact that nursing strikes are mostly temporary and will last just a couple to a few days. And yeah, that advice all worked for me, and it did only last 2 days, but it was a real confirmation for me that I am not ready to give up breastfeeding. And I don't know how much of my like emotional reaction to that and just outbursts of crying over that 2 days were me actually like upset about, you know, losing this thing with Rowan, even though it was temporary, although I didn't know that at the time, or whether it was like a hormonal reaction. Like, was I going through withdrawal from like nursing hormones? Like, I don't know. Is that a thing? When you wean, or if your baby like stops breastfeeding, do you go through like an emotional withdrawal? I don't know. The other thing that was really hard about the nursing strike was just feeling really useless as a parent. So nursing Rowan to sleep is one of the main ways that we get Rowan down for the night to sleep, and it's also the main way that we resettle him throughout the night when he wakes up. And him not being interested in that and not wanting to take the boob just made me feel useless, because that was my thing. That was what I know. That is how I parent, and not just to get him to sleep, but to soothe him and to calm him down and to bond with him. And Dan is the one with all of the knowledge about the bottles, and like, I'm like, how much do you give him for a feed? And like, how do you warm up the milk? Wait, which bottle do you use? Like, I'm the one there being like, Dan, help me. So that was really difficult as well. And not only did I feel like a useless parent, but I felt like a useless co-parent, because then it meant that Dan was doing a lot of the heavy lifting at night. Weirdly though, during Rowan's nursing strike, he slept and went to sleep in ways he has never done before and never done since. Which makes me think that like when him or me at whatever point are ready to wean, hopefully that means that he does have some of the skills there to be able to like settle himself in different ways. He just doesn't want to at the moment, and that's fine. Oh boy. So, speaking of weaning plans, a lot of people asked about weaning plans. So, have none at the moment. If I did have any plans, I'm definitely more keen to night wean at the moment than day wean. Day breastfeeding for me is an absolute breeze. I love it. It's really the night weaning that takes its toll. I have not had a full night's sleep in 16 months. And honestly, like, what does that actually do to a person? Like, what research is out there about like prolonged sleep deprivation? Because I can't imagine it has many positive consequences. Am I running on empty 24/7? Probably. How am I still here and doing this? I don't know. I don't know. Woo! But weaning still either just feels not super urgent right now and just like something that is like in the distant for us, but also feels quite overwhelming. Like, I don't even know where to begin. We really only have two methods of getting this baby to sleep. One is the boob and the other is Dan rocking him, because that baby will not let me rock him anymore. He only wants his daddy, and also he is just too big for me. Like, I cannot carry him for long enough that he will actually fall asleep. But even if Dan manages to rock him to sleep, then transferring him to the bed still most of the time requires me ready and waiting with my boob out, ready to like settle him, because he just like will wake up and cry as soon as you put him down. So it just feels very daunting, and we do feel a bit limited at the moment in terms of like how he gets to sleep and how he stays asleep. And so I'm not really sure how we would night wean without sleep training, and I still don't really know how I feel about sleep training yet. Very mixed, confused feelings about it. But if we did do something like that, I think I would want like professional support in that process rather than just winging it, because it just all seems very overwhelming. But for now, no weaning plans, just because it currently feels a lot easier just to keep doing what we're doing than try and attempt any changes. And you never know, maybe things will just change naturally. Maybe Rowan will wean himself, like who knows? And also it is lovely during the day most of the time. Okay, so I had a few other questions from people that I'm gonna try and do more quick fire. So somebody asked feeding positions for big boobs and big wriggly toddler. So the ones that I mentioned before, plus side lying. And one of the glorious things about having big boobs and breastfeeding with side lying is that I don't have to change sides, like move Rowan from one side to another or move myself to the other side of him, because I can just lie there and feed him with both boobs because the top boob reaches his mouth. It's so big. It's great. Do you think it limits women's independence? Okay, I said this would be quickfire, but I have thoughts. I believe that there are pros and cons and sacrifices that you have to make with whatever choices that you are making in your parenting. And so that goes for the choices that you make in terms of feeding. There are pros and cons to all of the different options that there are. For me personally, the like cons of breastfeeding are, yeah, to do with my limited independence. At the beginning, I very much had to always be around Rowan. Couldn't really be away from him for more than 2-3 hours, but that's just the name of the game. And then now that I can be away from him from long periods of time because, you know, he's eating and he's drinking out of bottles and whatnot, it's the admin of pumping, like the time it takes to pump, but then also like, okay, I'm going out with my friends. Do I take my pump with me? And do I pump whilst I'm out? Or do I just like pump when I get home? Like, where am I gonna clean the pump if I'm out and about? Like all of that kind of stuff. It's just a little bit of a faff. But yeah, to an extent, it does limit your independence. But again, there's just like pros and cons to every part of parenting and the different choices that you'll make. Did Dan feel like he missed out? So yeah, this is kind of like the flip side of that, is that yeah, he actually kind of does. He does feel a little bit jealous of my ability to breastfeed Rowan. So yeah, whilst it limits my independence, I also like have this really unique and special bond with my child. But of course, Dan has been able to bond with Rowan in so many other ways, and actually I think Dan might be his favorite at the moment, which is like fine. It's fine. You know, there's nothing like just hanging out with your child who's just over and over going, daddy, daddy, and you're like, mummy, I'm mummy, and he's like, daddy, daddy. So, you know, I won't take it personally, Rowan, it's fine. Has there been anything that made you nearly throw the towel in? Why, yes, those top 2 teeth when they came in. And then also whenever he's ill or refusing to sleep, every so often we'll get like a bad night or a couple of bad nights, and Dan and I are pulling our hair out, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. Well, we're both just like, I'm done. Send him back. No, thank you. But then he's just so adorable and cute in the daytime. What are you gonna do? Does pumping add much extra time to your routine? Okay, so I tend to pump twice a day. Actual pumping time, 10 minutes. But then there's also setup and cleanup and all of that. So I would say 20 minutes. 2 times a day, which adds up. Does it hurt / does it feel good? So it has moments of hurting, like with the teeth or a bit of niplash or whatever, or like pinching and scratching, or the nails. Ooh. But most of the time it feels somewhere on a scale of neutral to good, mostly towards the good end, I would say. And then a few folks who are pregnant and interested in breastfeeding have asked for some tips. So I don't know how much I'm going to be able to help. This is just what worked for me. If I actually had a tip that could be universal, that would be to get support, get feeding support, whether that be a lactation consultant or like free infant support feeding groups. Hospitals, midwives or GP practices or whatever might have different groups or support or things that they can offer you. There's tons of online resources as well. So in terms of what could apply to everyone, that would be my main tip. What worked for me though was perseverance. What fun. It was really really hard at times in that first 6 weeks with the teeth, with the nursing strike, but ultimately breastfeeding has worked out for me and worked out for Rowan, and it was kind of like a game of perseverance basically. The flip side of that advice, I know, is that for a lot of people who found breastfeeding really hard and it didn't work out for them, a lot of those people say that they wish that they had stopped earlier. So on the one hand, you've got people who breastfeeding worked out for who are like, persevere, it'll be worth it in the end, just keep going, you've got this. And then other people being like, I wish I'd stopped sooner, I wish I'd given myself permission to let go. And obviously those two pieces of advice are not complete opposite, but like you have to figure out where you sit, and that can only be a decision that you make in terms of what your unique situation is. So yeah, my main piece of advice again is just to get professional support, whether that be through a lactation consultant or groups or online. And I wish you all of the best in whatever way you feed your baby. There is so much pressure out there, so many different conflicting messages and things, and yeah, just listen to your gut, get the right support, and you got this, you got this. But there we have it. There is my 16 months, I guess, breastfeeding update and how things are going. If you are currently breastfeeding, chest feeding, or have done in the past and would like to share your experiences, are they similar to mine? Are they very different to mine? I would love to hear in the comments if you want to share. I hope that you are doing well, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.